The day he came home and realized the enemy wasn't overseas, he did what the law refused to do. He chose to protect his people. This is the story of Robert F. Williams, an organizer who refused to wait for permission, a husband and father who believed that dignity sometimes demands a rifle, and a leader whose name was buried because he challenged America to its face. If you care about honest history, give this video a like and come with us through a life that lit the fuse for a new kind of resistance, armed, unapologetic, unforgettable. Monroe, North Carolina, 1925. The air was segregated. The sidewalks, the schools, the swimming pools, the courthouse doorways. Every one of them told a story about who belonged and who didn't. Into this world came Robert Franklin Williams, a grandson of enslaved people, raised on stories that weren't fairy tales but survival plans. His grandmother, Ellen, kept the family alive on memory and warning. The mob can come at night. The law is not neutral. Justice isn't promised to the dark-skinned. Those lessons soaked in. They didn't make him bitter. They made him clear that as a teenager, he looked north for oxygen. Like many Southern black families during the Great Migration, Williams went to Detroit, where the assembly lines at Ford promised a wage if not a welcome. The work was punishing, but the city, supposedly free, was the real test. In 1943, Detroit erupted. White mobs invaded black neighborhoods, bodies were beaten and drowned. The National Guard rolled in. 34 people died. Most of them were black. Williams stood shoulder to shoulder with workers and neighbors, grabbing whatever they could. Sticks, bricks, busted boards, to defend their streets from marauders. It wasn't ideology. It was survival. He joined the United Auto Workers, drawn to the power of solidarity. On paper, the union hated discrimination. On the factory floor, race still drew invisible lines. Black workers got the dirtiest, most dangerous jobs. Promotions slipped past them. The informal networks that made careers simply didn't include them. Williams saw white brothers in arms cross a picket line to hug, then cross the street to avoid their black co-workers after hours. So he learned a lesson. Even among allies, dignity isn't handed over. It's demanded. He left the UAW not because he gave up on labor, but because he understood how deeply racism warped even progressive spaces. Then came the Marines. He enlisted during World War II expecting discipline and risk. He found segregation. Black Marines were segregated, issued inferior gear, steered into menial tasks instead of combat training. Williams spoke up during drills, during debriefs, in quiet moments when silence was the rule. The response was swift. He was labeled disruptive, a danger to morale, and pushed out with a stain on his record. That humiliation cut deep, but it sharpened the message. If the country wouldn't protect black life, black people had to protect themselves. He came home to Monroe and married Mabel Ola Robinson, a schoolteacher with nerves of steel and a mind like a metronome. She'd seen young men disappear after police encounters, watched girls turned away from books. They didn't need to convince one another of the stakes. They spoke the same language. Two sons came into a house where love was constant, danger was real, and fear wasn't allowed to dictate their next move. By 1955, Williams returned to a Monroe NAACP chapter with 6 exhausted members and a feeling of surrender in the air. He took the presidency and set it ablaze. The membership ballooned into the hundreds. Bricklayers, veterans, mothers tired of explaining the back door. Mabel anchored the logistics, built trust among women, ran communications, and kept the movement's feet on the ground. Where others fought in courtrooms, Williams turned up the pressure in the streets and inside public institutions. He started with the library. Black tax dollars paid for it. Black people couldn't use it. Officials hid behind cost and security. Williams tore the excuse to shreds. If tax money didn't discriminate, neither should public services. Under relentless prodding, the library integrated with barely a whisper. Then he went after the municipal pool, the most visible blue line of segregation in town. Faced with the choice to share the water, the city drained it instead. Better no swimming at all than the sight of black and white kids in the same pool. The cruelty of the choice said everything. And behind every policy stood the threat of violence. Klansmen paraded openly. Strange cars idled at night. Crosses burned. Flyers warned troublemakers to leave. The police looked away. So in 1957, Williams made the decision that would define his legacy. He applied for an NRA charter and formed the Black Armed Guard, 60 or so men, mostly veterans, legally organized to protect their families when the state would not. They set rules. No firing unless fired upon, no action unless lives were at risk. They practiced in the woods, learned to hold a line, learned to hold their nerve. It was controlled self-defense, and it changed the math. For the first time in Monroe, the Klan met resistance they couldn't bully. That fall, the Klan attacked the home of Dr. Albert Perry, a respected black physician and the local NAACP vice president. The guard had prepared, fortified windows, posted lookouts. When the night lit up with gunfire, they returned it, disciplined, steady. The Klan retreated. City officials, suddenly anxious, banned future Klan parades. Not a lawsuit, not a press release. The difference was men who refused to be easy prey. But Williams's impact wasn't measured only in ammunition. In 1958, 2 black children, James Thompson, 9, and David Simpson, 7, were locked up for a kiss on the cheek from a white girl during a child's game. They were held without access to parents or counsel, beaten and threatened with the electric chair by police. A judge pronounced them guilty and sent them to reform school. Williams made sure the world heard about the kissing case. He wrote, organized, contacted allies from Eleanor Roosevelt to human rights advocates abroad. International newspapers mocked America's talk of freedom. Under pressure, the governor arranged for their release. The boys were freed, but the scars on them on Monroe ran deeper than any headline. The next year, after the acquittal of white men accused of raping a black woman, Williams stood on courthouse steps and said out loud what many felt. How can you tell us to trust a system that mocks us? If violence is visited upon us, he argued, we must be prepared to meet it. Reporters stripped his words of context and printed them like a confession. An NAACP official endorses violence. National leaders recoiled. Martin Luther King Jr., without naming him, doubled down on nonviolence as the moral engine of change. Donors grew skittish. The national NAACP suspended Williams.